Hello,
Hello.
Hello.
Mike. You joined us in the nick of time. Good lad.
Mike arrives precisely when he means to. He is never early nor late.
The Gandalf of the group. Good lad. Let the nerdiness begin now.
I gotta admit,
So-
first of all, I haven't seen Dune.
Yeah, well,
That's okay.
we're going to be careful. Mike, could you turn yourself up just a tad? Because I've not had a chance to.
Yeah, there we go.
measure
Is
you.
that a bit better?
That's a bit better, yeah. Nice
Let me
one.
also actually speak close to the mic.
Yeah, ASMR style.
Don't want that, but by the way, I might make a tea quick. I'm just coming from one stream to another.
As long as you mute
That's all right.
yourself, all good.
Yeah.
But before you go, Mike, we need to know something. So you don't want any spoilers from the film, but you have read the book enough.
Yeah. So I've read the book. I'm in the book past where the film is.
Yeah.
So that's fine. Just don't want to know things that are missing from the the
Right.
movie.
Right. Sorry.
I think as a rule, we're going to avoid too many spoilers anyway.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
Yeah.
But me and Shane at least have been nerding out quite hard about this, having read the books.
And I have listened to a bunch of the soundtrack, at least the sketchbook, but I understand there's like 3 albums that Hans released.
Yeah, just 3. You just have to deal with 3 soundtrack albums.
Well, what was your guys? Because he released those 2 tracks as a sort of teaser, didn't he, a while back? I think when people were impatient because the film kept being delayed. What were your thoughts on those tracks when they came out?
Those tracks that are a million minutes long.
I think it was like Paul's Dream and then something else.
Oh, okay.
Can't remember.
Yeah, no, I remember those.
I
It's a
remember
little prequel
thinking
of the sketchbook kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Preview,
Yeah.
I meant to say.
And I remember thinking, oh, I don't know. That was my first.
I just put it on without really looking at it, and then I was going for a walk listening, and like 20 minutes later, I'm like, man, this score is just all one sound. And then I realized it was one track.
Exactly. There's definitely we're not going to be playing stuff from the sketchbook tonight just for logistics purposes and being able to finish some tracks hopefully. But the sketchbook is very much like a train of thought from Hans Zimmer. If you've watched his masterclass, which I hope you all have invested in that. Lol. That's how he writes basically. So I think he's literally just written his like train of thought sketches and then put the locators and exported it.
And then
That's
you
what he's
there, make it ready for the album.
Yeah, exactly.
I think something that's interesting kind of about this too, because one of my students brought it up today, sort of chatting about these 3 different albums. And I think it is interesting kind of just in the process, like, Hans has mentioned this sort of train of thought writing. But then, so if those are like the initial sketches, then there's also, I guess, a album of just the suites, which is a different thing. And then there is the soundtrack album, which are then the cues.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually really interesting to see all of these released because it sort of says a lot about the writing process. So it's kind of like these initial sketches which come up and are, okay, here's sort of like my, just working through these ideas. And then let me turn those into actual suites that I can present to the director and producers as sort of, here is this character theme, and then that character theme becomes that sort of vocabulary that's used throughout the cues.
Yeah, I think
So I think
particularly
it is
for
kind of
this.
interesting to see it and be able to listen to those kind of in isolation is actually kind of cool and unique.
I think particularly for this because his job is part of the world building because that is such a huge task with these films, I should say, because they are now making the second one. Yeah, that's like it's a big thing, and I think it's a good way to approach it of constant development, basically. Even if it's a lot, I think in the soundtrack album it feels like it's quite subtle at times. But yeah, he's constantly kind of trying things out, and I don't know how much of the sketchbook album ended up in the film. I'm not sure about that, but yeah. They're there to listen to. I hope you've listened to it. What should we start with, guys? What were your... Well, for those that have seen it, what were your thoughts on the soundtrack in the film? Tell us in the chat as well, guys, if you've seen it, if you've listened to it, let us know your thoughts. But Shane, Ale, you've seen it.
Yes, I saw it today. I saw it this morning in IMAX. It was very loud, which I expected, so I brought earplugs to be safe. No, I mean, I really loved the film. I had a few like quibbles, but as a here's my cred as a devoted lover of the book. And I'm actually up to God Emperor of Dune, which is the 4th in the series.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a big nerd. So I really love the film, but in terms of the score, the first thing that I felt was that there was a lot of music, like in terms of spotting, like there's music pretty much everywhere. It's like the inversion of that normal thing where it's like, oh, when you don't have very much music and suddenly you hear music, it's like, wow, really impactful. They almost inverted that. And it's like for the few moments that you don't hear music, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is different. Like there's this, I don't know, shall I say when it happens or what happens?
There's a couple of fight scenes where...
Yeah, so there's a fight near the end of the film. Let me just put that. I don't think that's a spoiler. There are fights in this film. Sorry, guys. There's a fight near the end of the film. Which
there's sand as well.
No.
Guys, come on.
So the fight near the end of the film is noticeably silent. And I was like, wow, good. Like this really felt nice as a nice break. So I did sort of feel like there was maybe too much music. What do you guys think?
I agree. We were discussing this earlier, Shane. Like, I think he's to just criticize the most successful film composer in the world. I think, in my view, he overcompensated the integration of sound design and score that made it feel relentless. And I know, like, Ale, you've had thoughts about that on other films of his, like Dunkirk and stuff like that, where it is just constant. And actually...
It's really relentless.
Yeah.
There's no... and also, it's not even subtle. The music goes from 0 to 100. It's like he has a light switch. It's either on 100% or off. So there's no dimmer whatsoever. So
there's no Zimmer dimmer.
Zimmer dimmer. It's really too much music, too much all the time, and I mean and that's one of the problems that I had with the score, which is funny because I was looking at my WhatsApp, the WhatsApp group we have, and I went back to look at because I once texted you, I listened to the DUNE score, in brackets, the couple of tracks that are already out. It doesn't matter which galaxy you're on. If there's sand, Hans is going to use a motherfucking duduk. Because that's another thing we were saying before the stream. If Hans Zimmer can take any liberties, who can? I mean, in some places he could have gone somewhere different. Who decided that in 10,000 years on a different planet that's made of sand, we still have to identify the desert with Middle East?
It's the one instrument that survived all of space and time, is that they still have a duduk.
Just on that, Ale, I suspect Shane's going to say the same thing, which is that on that specific example, I mean, I'm not saying duduk was necessarily the way to go, but I think that's very deliberate because in the story, it's a very deliberate comparison to the Middle East. I mean, it's spices, oil, and it's about white people taking over brown people's land.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about
but I know what you mean.
There are, but still, you can... I don't understand why...
Alienize it a bit. Make it... Yeah, I know what you mean. No. And the thing that bothered me, though, about that...
I like how we're all just saying all the bad things first.
Yeah, we're getting out of the way, and then we're going to know that.
The other problem is...
But it was for me that everything needed representing. And, like, for me, like, kind of... When I think of the desert, having never been there, I think of silence. And actually, that would have been a really interesting tool to play more with and have that breathing space, not just in extreme moments of tension, like in the fight.
Yeah, because I was going to say the sound design was like fantastic in this film. Everything sounds amazing and so like gritty and tangible, and like it's like, because obviously within the world of Dune, you know, it's the distant future, but there are no computers, and all of the equipment is really like, what's the word, more mechanical, and so the sound world reflects that really well. So it does feel a little bit of a shame when like sometimes the music steps on the sound design, which it kind of has to do if it's there all the time. And it was also dubbed very loud. There were moments where I was like, I know the book really well, so I kind of know what people are saying. And I'm like, thank God, because if I didn't, I wouldn't know what the characters are saying. I don't know if you guys felt that way, but there was some moments where I was like, I don't know. Yeah, I can't hear what they're saying.
There's other films that, sorry guys, infection's still lingering. There's other films that Hans Zimmer's done with Nolan where I don't mind I mean, Ali's going to disagree, but where the dialogue is no longer king, I don't mind that. In this, I think it needed to be. And I think that, like you're saying, there's moments where you just can't hear what they're saying occasionally. Like one or two times, I'm just like, there's just no need for that intensity with the dialogue that's being said. I'm keen to move past the rant, guys.
Well,
we should
one
listen
thing
to music.
before we do, just because we were talking about kind of comparing it to Dunkirk, like if you're saying that it's wall-to-wall music, Ale, I remember we saw Dunkirk together. And
I rewatched it lately.
And
I was there too
as well. Shane, were you there too? I don't know.
I don't
A bunch
think
of us
We
saw it.
we literally bought the T-shirt, guys.
But,
You did. I
bought
didn't.
it twice.
So I remember at
I was
the end
on
of the film.
I was on the losing team. I'm not gonna.
Poor Mike is never going to finish this point.
Go on, Mike.
Sorry.
I remember at the end of the film, Ale, you go, I counted 6 seconds that don't have music.
Yeah, I
And 3 of them
exaggerated.
were between the end of the film and the credits.
Yeah.
And so it's like literally wall to wall. And just a point to make on that is that I thought that was really ineffective because it was counterintuitive against what they were trying to do. And with that film, they were trying to have it be intense all the time. And I think visually you can do that in a way that you can't do it with audio. And like that intense music and intense audio has a shelf life that after you start hearing it for a long time, it no longer becomes tense. And it's like if you listen to really dissonant music, after a while, it stops feeling very dissonant. Whereas if you watch like really grotesque images, after a while, it still can be very grotesque. So I think like if you have these really intense visuals, you don't need to have really intense music all the time to mirror it. And it actually just sort of softens it in a way. And so being more choice about where to use that could be a lot more effective.
Well,
That's speaking specifically about Dunkirk, but maybe you found the same thing with this.
Well, I think the anomaly with that one is that that film was very distilled and action heavy in itself, and it was an hour and a half. This film is over 2.5 hours long, and so that's more than an hour more of relentless music. So I think
Of Duduk.
some Duduk. Shall we listen to something, guys?
Yeah.
Go for it.
But
How about-
well, I don't know if we're going to talk at all more about Dunkirk, so I'll just point out that Laura has taken umbrage with Mike and said that Dunkirk is a masterpiece.
I respectfully disagree.
I
Very
had
respectfully.
I had mixed feelings about it, honestly. I thought it was a lot of very interesting things, and it was purely just placement. It was just so much of it. And I think it's giving Hans Zimmer the license to do that isn't always helping the film. I think that's our only criticism, really. Like, I can't speak to the other guys about the quality of the music itself. I thought it was great to listen to, and apart from the Nimrod cue, don't get me started. But we're really. Oh, I hated it, guys. Oh, I literally my bum
Sorry,
puckered up
I
when
do
heard
respect your opinion, Lara. I think there's room for everybody to have their own taste, of course.
that. Yeah, but I think I think what we're really saying is that the spotting wasn't selective enough, maybe, and I think that's also an issue with Dune. Let's listen to something, guys. Can we listen to Bene Gesserit?
Sure.
Can you mute yourselves so I can play it effectively? And let's listen to the first. Well, let's listen to the whole thing. It's only 2 minutes. There we have it. You threw it, guys. Oh, not quite. Shane's still on it. Are you done, Shane?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, it's all right. I apologize.
I was actually listening back on the stream. You should probably mute your mic, Sam, while we're playing things back, just for reference. I can hear clinking and tinking of tea and stuff. But anyway.
I will Well, I'm not sure I can.
You can probably just do it through Streamlabs just by clicking mute on your your mic input.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter.
I'll do it.
Let's not break everything.
Well, I was going to say I may have added some slightly dissonant tones via my aircon, which I'm now turning off. So
do not criticize Hans for those.
Well, I have to say, for me, this is one of the more successful. I mean, I think this is great personally. There is actually quite a bit of breathing space in that track. But Shane, shall we give some, and Mike, shall we give some nerdy background that doesn't spoil the film about what Bene Gesserit are?
Sure.
Go on, Shane.
If you think it's useful.
I trust you.
Well, oh, you've not given me any kind of prompt.
Okay, I'll do it. It's more because my speaking is crap at the moment. But so Bene Gesserit are super nuns, basically. They're a sect of.
That sounds so bad.
Yeah, it sounds like a dodgy film, doesn't it? But they're essentially
really selling this, guys.
Guys, those listening must know we actually love this story. So we're being protective of it. That's all it is. But Bene Gesserit are a group of, I think they're all female, and so that's why I use the term nuns, because there's a religious aspect to it. But they have this discipline that allows them to. Basically, they're super psychologists, and they're able to manipulate people with they're just super in tune with how the world works and how people work and all of this. And through that, there are certain powers and disciplines, like being able to hear the past Bene Gesserit that have gone on and through it, and channel that through a power called the voice and things like that, which the film does show. Now, I think this track works really well because of the way it uses voices rhythmically at first, which so sorry. If you've listened to or seen Amazing Spider-Man 2, by the way, which is an example of a score much better than the film. He does that with Pharrell. There's some really cool kind of rhythmic speaking stuff. And I think it works really well in this context as well. Thoughts, guys? Stop me from talking.
Yeah, please. I think it captures even just even though it's a fairly simple thing to they deal with the voice and they use voices, let's put voices in the music. It actually is more than that. It captures really quite well how they're very secretive and they're very whispering and they're kind of running the show behind the scenes. That's kind of like what the Bene Gesserit are all about. And I think that and with the religious aspect of the female whispered chanting, it's a very evocative sound and it really captures it very well. So when they sort of appear in the film and this plays alongside them, I agree. I think it's really successful. I think it gives them a certain amount of gravitas and communicates information about them to the audience on quite just a raw level, you know what I mean?
They definitely lean into the sinister with it, don't they? It's not. I think Hans Zimmer goes for a kind of ambiguous motivations idea, which is bang on throughout the whole score. And this in particular is they're essentially I don't want to make the association, but there's a sort of far more ambiguous Jedi aspect to the Bene Gesserit. They have certain, again, we've talked about this, Shane, I don't want to say powers, but essentially they're, what they can do is really cool, but it comes
at the cost of...
Before Jedis.
They're Jedis before Jedis, yeah, in a way. But yeah, I think, and there's a whole thing as well with the Bene Gesserit that they're led by this, she's called Reverend Mother, isn't she? And she's essentially the all-powerful leader of this group. And there's a very good scene at the beginning of the film, which you'll be aware of, Mike, because you've read that far, where
it's the very first scene in the book.
Is it right? I think it might be right at the beginning, yeah. But it's essentially the Paul's test and they do that really well. I think it's a really clever scene in the film, and there's elements of this going on.
Yeah, that's a great scene. I thought it was really gripping. But sorry, veering into talking about the film.
Well, there's a lot of that in the trailer as well. They talk about the scene with the gom jabber and all that.
Yes, Lara, the library scene, exactly. It's the one they actually. I don't think it's specifically a library in the book, but they chose it for the film. And there's actually a really good YouTube video for the nerdiest amongst us where Denis Villeneuve breaks down that scene and all the choices he makes. Initially, Charlotte Rampling, who plays the Reverend Mother, wasn't supposed to wear this kind of mesh. Again, it's shown in the trailer, so no spoilers. But they decided it looked so cool and creepy that they kept it on and things like that. But yeah, I think it's a really good scene, that. Yeah.
This is something that I was sort of discussing earlier today, was talking about like finding this kind of connection, like, okay, they whisper and they use the voice. And so we're going to, base this cue around using voice as an instrument. I think is also something that is really, it's useful in kind of any context to draw it in as a sort of creative addition to the narrative and sort of help it be inherently tied to what you're trying to represent. So like another sort of classic example is using the typewriter in Atonement,
which I watched the other night. Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant.
That I remember when we were in college and Dario Marianelli came and talked, and he said pretty much, like, find the one thing that you can kind of relate. And he's like, because I use the typewriter is pretty much the reason I won an Oscar, is that like it, and I think it's in a very creative way as well. It really helps the audience connect to everything, so it's can not just for a sort of promotional purpose of like, look at the thing I did. It does have significance. So, I think that it can be such a simple idea like that can then become really effective. It's sort of like, because it has that core foundation that it's linked to.
Yeah, I think, for sure. Like, characteristically, it makes perfect sense. And, perhaps you could say the same for the Duck, but let's not get into that again.
I think, to be honest, this is one of my two favorite cues from this soundtrack. I think it's really amazing, the fact that he uses the voice both as a like kind of a soundscape and also as a rhythmic element. While I think it's a very interesting choice, even if it was kind of also an easy choice for him, I guess, to use voices to represent the manifesto. So I think this cue is really cool.
I mean, there's definitely ways of doing it that wouldn't have worked as well. So I think, like, yeah, there's a bit of a needle thread there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think
sorry, go on, Shane.
Sorry, Sam, you go ahead first.
No, I was just going to say that, there are voices all over the score, actually. So it's just, he uses them in a very particular way for this. And I think this track, again, no spoilers, but will become more reused in the next parts, because there's plenty of Bene Gesserit things going on in this film, but the next film definitely comes to the fore a bit more as Paul starts to grow, let's say. So yeah, it's a really key theme to get right, and I'm really glad that he did.
Here's an interesting, little thought to drop into the mix. I'm assuming COVID didn't really affect the production of the score in any way, because when I looked at the list of musicians that were used and listened to the soundtrack and the way it was put together, it's like some soloists and a lot of like synths and a lot of sound design elements and warping of textures and stuff. And I think it works really well overall. But I wonder, like, we can only guess, was there ever the thought of, and this is the moment where we'll bring in the orchestra, and they just like couldn't? I heard definitely some brass, but then it was also like could have been like sampled horns with a synthesizer on top of it. I couldn't really place it.
I was really happy, to be honest, not to hear the orchestra. Just as I was unhappy to hear the duduk. I was really.
They balance perfectly.
There's a very slim bandwidth of Ali's approval. It's like not orchestra, not deduct. It's just right there.
I was really happy. First of all, because I think the comparison with Star Wars would have been too. It would have been too much. Same kind of world. I know that Star Wars came later, so and I was telling Shane that I prefer Dune a million times over Star Wars. It looks like Star Wars for adults, and I think the horns with the synth layered one on top of the other was one of the coolest sound in the soundtrack, and I'm happy they didn't use the orchestra.
Me too, and I think it was definitely a collaborative decision from everybody to not do that and to avoid too much association. Guys, we've got some good comments going on.
Which I think you are ripe to talk about. As someone who worked on Arrival, why don't you come in and share some thoughts?
Well, I was there for the orchestral stuff. I wasn't present for the vocals, but yeah, Johan had this guy who he recorded with straight onto thick tape. And
just to really clarify too, you could share, if you want to, kind of like your role. You were part of the orchestration team on it.
So I was orchestrator's assistant. I assisted my boss, Anthony, who was orchestrator conductor. And so when he was conducting, I sat in the sessions next to Johan and made quick changes. And sat in on a 3-hour harpsichord session where he played one note over and over for 3 hours. But that was great. Anyway, but I think I know what you're saying about the originality of the vocals in Arrival, but they were so specific to that film that those voices are meant to represent the aliens. We're not dealing with aliens in this film, so I think it's at least not overtly and not yet. But I think it's very deliberately keeping it pretty human up to now, because I honestly agree with that decision. I think it makes sense to do it that way. The Bene Gesserits are not aliens; they are humans that have learnt this super technique and slightly sinister technique, and so I think it makes sense to have this almost tribal aspect to it.
Also Alessandro's comment, as someone who was sort of connected on the inside, was that very much one of Johan's decisions to choose the vocalist and to kind of create that sound world? Or do you, because I guess what Alessandro's kind of getting at is perhaps it's a trend, if like Denis Villeneuve.
I think knowing that... honestly, I think it's as likely to be a collaborative decision as a here's something I did today, what do you think? And Denis like, yeah, it's perfect. I think for Arrival, it was almost certainly the latter, because that's how Johan wrote. He would get musicians in, record them, send ideas. And I know Hans does that as well, but it could well have been more of a group decision in that way, because they'll have had extensive discussions about getting the music right, because there's so much weight on that film, whereas Arrival I think was a bit newer and fresher in terms of the story, and so he probably had a bit more free reign, I would guess. At that point they hadn't done Blade Runner yet, which didn't go so well for Johan, where he didn't have the free reign he was used to, and so that caused problems, hence Hans taking over. Guys, should we listen to something else? Thoughts? What should we go for? How about ripples in the sand? Bit of that.
Yeah, maybe just stop when
Like
you're
3
ready.
minutes. Let's aim for about 3 minutes, and I'll put my hand up. I'm going to try and mute myself as well.
Okay.
Mute yourself, guys. Cheers. Okay, guys. I wanted to get in the epic bit. I think
Sounds amazing.
More.
I mean, it kind of goes without saying, but the score, like production values and everything, sounds incredible.
Yeah, I think I think it gets even bigger, but I think just in the interest of valuable discussion, that one's like a key theme in the whole
in
thing.
Man of Steel. Yeah.
We saw your comment on Zoom. But yeah, it's perhaps one of the more handsy, as it were, but it's a key theme and it's kind of cool and well produced. Again, vocals, but different types of vocals. Just wanted to answer a couple of questions on the chat, guys. First, we've got. Do you all agree Dune is Star Wars for adults? No, I think Star Wars is Dune for children. That's what I think. No, I love Star Wars, but that's what it was supposed to be.
I love Star Wars as well. I love Star Wars as well. I wasn't saying like it's like saying Hobbit is the Lord of the Rings for children,
exactly,
and vice versa.
And as intended,
I love the Hobbit, and yeah, of course.
As intended, like Star Wars was meant to be George Lucas has said it was meant to be like a TV serial.
Yeah, I didn't mean it as an insult to Star Wars, to be honest.
No, but I think it's important to see it that way around. Dune was 20 years earlier than Star Wars, or Yeah.
12.
Was it really only 12?
1965.
Okay. Well, anyway,
Right?
it
Wasn't
was.
Star Wars 177 and June 65?
For sure.
Yeah, but for sure, Star Wars was heavily influenced by Dune. And there's definitely part of that. Another question from Darren: spotting Blade Runner 2049. To answer your question, myself, look, the director has final say on everything. So, whether they discussed it initially in the spotting stage or not, it happened because Hans wanted to do it, and Denis didn't protest at the dub. So that's why it stayed in there. I think this is kind of what I was getting at earlier, is that as much as giving Hans free reign has good results, it means that I wonder how much people brown nose him a little bit in the filmmaking process, and that's why we end up with so much music. Thoughts? What do you guys think on that?
Well, but shouldn't I think a good composer should also kind of restrain himself from just putting music all over the place. And I don't think Hans does it because he wants music from the first moment until the last, just to show off. I think in his mind, it's useful for the narrative. I just disagree, and I guess we all disagree from what we've talked about earlier. Sometimes it's much more effective to make a choice of like not having music at all in certain scenes. And I loved in certain fight scenes that they didn't have any music, and it made them feel even more real.
It's also the more music you have, the more royalties you earn.
You're right, yes, because I guess he needs money.
But also, guys, I think there's an element of the process as well being essentially music edited. I mean, he as we know, he writes trains of thought, hours of music before the film. I think possibly even before filming. And I guess it's music edited. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I mean, that sounds plausible to me, but I think it might also be a case of like a snowball effect where like if you're going through the first reel and it's 80% music, and now in the second reel, you're like, now we're really going to dial it back, then suddenly it feels wrong. You know what I mean? So it's like once you start making those decisions, you kind of get pushed to keep making them. I don't know. It seems that way to me because it's like the more it's in there, the more that taking it out is like, whoa, something's happened. The air's gone out of the room.
Yeah.
Whereas if you place it more carefully,
but I think it's you're saying it's a conscious choice. It's not like something that happened because I've written so much music up until now. Then I guess I have to go on like that.
Well, I think what you're saying though, I think it's a cowardly choice. I think the issue is that
I don't know.
No, that's what I think. I think slapping Hans Zimmer score all over a film is very safe because he brings an awful lot of weight to a film and people love his music, and rightly so. It's good, but I think there's a cleverness that could be achieved from the silence. That's what I think.
I'd agree with Shane though. I would say that it's kind of like not just one decision versus the other, like whether it's Denis Villeneuve or Hans deciding, where it should be, which is probably more Denis Villeneuve. But that kind of once you kind of make it a choice, like either it's in or it's out, and that I think it would be really sort of disruptive. And so it's kind of like if you're have a bunch of stuff moving along and then you make a drastic change by all of a sudden having it being very sparse, it draws a lot of attention to that. And it could draw too much attention to that in saying like, well, why is this now so significant that we have no music? And so making a single choice of kind of where to do that could give you that impact. But but
it's a general choice made at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the, I guess, where I'd support that is that, it's sort of once we do that, we sort of have to stick with it.
Yeah.
And I guess, Sam, maybe what you're saying is like that choice to either have it in or out is the one that you think is the sort of wrong one, like playing it safe.
In my opinion, that I think that his kudos, his credentials, his fame will have weighed heavily on that decision. I think that it's a very conscious one, and not.
Yeah, but
Sorry.
I don't know if I agree, because you make it sound like he wants music all over the place.
I'm not saying it was his choice. I'm not saying it's his choice.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
I think it's Denis Villeneuve's choice, who by the way is my favorite director. So this is going to sound critical again, but I think that that he loves Hans Zimmer and has said as much. He loves Hans Zimmer as much as Joe Blogg's public does, and that's why there is so much music on it. But my personal opinion is that this is heavily set in the desert, and we're talking about examples of a meaningful drop out of music. For me, that's the perfect opportunity to really explore just the sound design, or the soundscape of the desert, and leave it alone and let it say its own thing.
Now I was thinking that there's a specific point that I thought. I think it's, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's when they're in the tent, okay, and he's having these visions, and he basically snaps out of the vision, but the music stays like 100% for like another 20 seconds. So it was kind of, I was expecting, okay, the crescendo of the music when he has the vision, and then a drop out when the vision and when he snaps out of it. But it wasn't there, and it was a bit disruptive in my opinion. Have you noticed
specifically?
Okay.
I don't remember it specifically, but I'm going to see it again, so I will listen out.
I do remember that scene, although I was thinking more like, man, this is a really tough thing to try and show on film, because the way it's described, I was thinking about that at that time. But it does seem right to me based on some other spots I can remember where the music very much hangs around and bleeds down and moves you.
Yeah, one thing is, I agree. Like a sudden dropout wouldn't make sense, but it kind of made me stay in the vision state of mind. So it didn't really.
Could have been a choice as well, because those visions are like very central to a lot of what happens in the book. Like Paul's questioning himself of like, should I follow what I can see I'm going to do, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I was just going to say, on the topic of safety that we were talking about earlier, I do feel sympathetic. I don't know anything about this world, but I do feel sympathetic to the idea that Dune has already like kind of failed to be made into a film multiple times. And like the Lynch film, widely regarded as not good. The Jodorowsky film failed. The sci-fi adaptation, some people like it, but it's like, I don't know. So there's a lot of like reason to think this movie can like go wrong, especially when you're thinking about it so esoteric. There's so much world building. There's so many different factions and new concepts to take on all at once. And the film moves fast. Even though it's long, it moves fast because there's so much to do. So I do feel sympathetic to the idea that like, we got to put this stuff here because it really sells the gravitas of everything and really brings people into the world. There's no point there. I'm just kind of musing.
To be fair, the book moves pretty quick too. In that like they just sort of mention all of these different terms and, people and planets and stuff, and you're just kind of expected to like take it at face value. And I really like that about the book, that it's sort of like, okay, that's the world, just live in it now. Sort of fill in the blanks yourself.
This is exactly what the film does, Mike, and that's why, I mean, again, let's getting away from over criticism. Like, we love the film, or we really like the film, and that's what I thought it did best. Is it covered the world building aspect of it in a very uncondescending way, and it just lets you absorb what you want to absorb. But the actual crux of the story, at least in this half, is quite straightforward, and that at least I think is easy to follow. It's the other elements, characters where you're not quite sure how they're doing what they're doing. You just have to let it happen, and that's fine. Like just accept it. And it's kind of what the book does a little bit as well.
But it's like you've criticized, brace yourselves, guys. You've criticized Lord of the Rings before in the how, they'll spend like 5 pages describing the color of a brooch, and so it's kind of
I've criticized
So I appreciate that about sci-fi stories where they don't over sort of describe and give too much detail. It's like, let me live in the world, let me kind of imagine what part of this is. I don't need my hand held through all of it. And so because it's really like there's a world, but this is the story, and I think it's good that is sort of the central part of at least the book. And then it seems from what everybody's been saying that the film follows it pretty well.
Yeah, it's great.
For sure.
I agree. It's great that they don't hold your hand, explaining you everything, all the backstories, why the Arcanum hate the Atreides, or why. All the stuff that the super nuns that you were talking about, Sam. It feels natural because you're suddenly dropped in that world. You're living their life. They already know all this stuff, instead of being like the cheap, dumb it down version, or like trying to explain every single thing. Because you remember we did that thing. And just so the character says that just to tell the audience what's happening. So I really loved that there was nothing of that.
There was one thing kind of like that, and it is sort of in the books. I gotta remember exactly, but which is like, well, this is a minor, tiny spoiler, but kind of towards the beginning of the film, Paul is like watching some like informational videos, basically, which are kind of just like little exposition videos. But I do recall he did study those little tapes. That kind of thing happened in the book, so it's not like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But it would have been really interesting, maybe impossible, but it would have been really interesting if they could have found a show don't tell solution to even more of those problems. But that may have just extended the film length too far. I don't know.
I think on the specific example maybe you're thinking about, Shane, I think they were under the radar, really trying to make you remember it. I think I know what you're talking about, and it's a very specific example that's really important in the next part. So,
but for example, one thing that Shane was saying about the mouse. So
that's exactly what I was saying. Yeah, the mouse.
Yeah,
basically.
I don't have any idea what the mouse is.
But you've remembered it. But you've remembered it.
I remember it now. Yeah. Okay. I know, but I mean, they don't give a shit about telling you, okay, this mouse is important because there's something.
But they're doing it by showing you. That's my point. Is that they give it airtime. Anyway, that's. I think I agree with Shane. I think, and the opening of the film is a very subtle kind of exposition as well, talking about spies.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah,
but that happens in the book. Basically.
Does it? That little opening sequence does it happen?
Well, not the way they do it, but you kind of organically find out.
Yeah, I think that was handled well. Yeah, they give you the gist of it in a really nice way without getting bogged down in the details. There was also like a major player in the kind of galactic politics. Well, sorry, Mike, that's not present, but I actually think it worked totally fine that they weren't there, because they're really kind of like, I'm talking about the Spacing Guild. They don't appear. They're mentioned, but they don't appear, and I think it's actually kind of works. They're very important, but they're not important right now. And all you need to, so I think.
Well, same with the Emperor as well. The Emperor is a big
although, but he doesn't. Does he appear in the book? Only near the end.
Yeah, but I think he's obviously this kind of looming figure throughout anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, they dealt with that really well. Should we listen to something else, guys? Because we're running out of time.
Sure. Sorry, I'm getting lost in the weeds.
I mean, I wanted to listen to the main thing I hated about the score, but we've been quite critical. So if anyone has any suggestions of a track they like, I'm all ears. But I was going to put on the bagpipe one. What do you think? Let's do it.
Yes, okay. The bagpipes.
I'll fade it out again, guys, so keep your eyes up for my signal. But
which one is it?
Armada.
Oh, yeah.
Here Here we go.
That felt like a suitable stopping point.
Yes, I thought I'd find a lull. I have to say, I'd forgotten about the beginning of that track. I love the beginning of it. I just can't. Guys, I'm sorry, I can't understand the bagpipes.
The fact is, I was the fuck. I was
Tropical bagpipes.
I was asking Shane.
That didn't work the way I wanted. I was trying to add the flag of Scotland.png.
All right, yeah.
That would have been good.
That's a very Scotland.
That's a nice picture of Scotland you've got
Yeah,
behind
exactly.
you there.
Scotland as we wish it were.
Scottish landscape.
Zoom wasn't on my side.
No, I was actually I was asking Shane if it's something that's in the book, because there's a guy playing bagpipes at one point. So I thought
no
maybe
I have a
bagpipes in the
theory.
book.
No, I have a theory about this. I think I was talking to you about this, Shane, wasn't I? But essentially, I think they're really trying to hit home that these are humans that used to be on Earth long ago, and they're trying to sort of show. They're trying to have a connection over that long period of time. For me, it's far too on the nose. It's like they used to be Scottish, and Caladan's basically Scotland. Is kind of
even the grave site where Leto and Paul have that discussion and they're talking about their Paul's grandfather. It looks very much like Scotland.
Yeah, it's very
it does have a flavour. But I think I think honestly I'd probably have hated it less if there weren't an actual bagpipe player as part of the procession.
I think the same. I think the same. Because if there wasn't a bagpipe player, I would have thought the exact opposite of what I thought about the duduk. Like, why the fuck would they play bagpipes? it's a cool idea. It's something you don't expect.
It's just so incongruous when they're walking into the desert and there's this guy like in a kill.
Yeah.
You'd get sand in your pipes; it would ruin them.
Exactly.
I was going to say one thing that was a bit of a missed opportunity was that there is one musical instrument in the book of Dune, and it is called the balisette, and Gurney Halleck plays it, and it is like a 9-stringed zither, I want to say. That's what's the name of the actor? Josh Brolin's character. And it's sort of mentioned. Paul says, "Oh, why don't you play us a song?" And he's like, "No, not now." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's sad." But it's like it's the one musical instrument that actually that I'm aware of, because I haven't finished the whole series, but that appears in the expanded like Dune universe, and it does feel like maybe they'll put it in later.
Well, it's actually mentioned in the first book quite a lot.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it's brought up where Paul plays it as well, and so yeah, it's kind of like a guitar of the world, where it's sort of like everybody picks it up around a campfire and can just use it as to sing along.
I think that Josh Brolin may have been joking, but he did say that he played some in some scenes. I wonder if
perhaps they cut them. Yeah,
maybe they cut them because they definitely make his character kind of a bit gruffer than he is in the book, and they do kind of have the poetry aspect to him. They do that quite well, but he's basically meant to be this Renaissance man kind of character. He's a mentor to Paul, and
I do feel like this is less about the score and more about the movie, but that was some of my quibbles, was that some of the characters got a little bit like desaturated. Like Gurney Halleck was one, and I thought Thufir Hawat, who is really awesome in the books, and he kind of just turned into a bit of a doddering old man in the film.
Well, I think they'll lean into him a bit more in the next film, because there's elements of the plot that he's vital to.
It's true, yeah. And they also did not use the word mentat once in the film, which I guess, look, there's a lot of stuff being thrown at you, but that's such an interesting part of the world, and the fact that Paul's a mentat as well, but they don't mention it. And anyway.
I think they just kind of decided to show and not tell for that one. Like you see quite clearly that they're a form of human computer in a world of no computers, and they show that well, but it's just one of those things that it just gets so heavy.
Yeah, it could have just been that it was too confusing, like with that.
Yeah, I think it probably would have made
it. Like it's kind of like, okay, which superhuman are you?
Yeah, and also I think we're also too used to the TV series and having like the possibility for the narrative to be like 50, 60 hours long, so that you can explain everything in detail, every little thing. And I think they did a great job, even if I didn't read the books. But from what you guys are telling me, for example, Josh Brolin says, "No, not now. I'm not playing you a song now." So it gives you a hint that he actually plays that instrument, or that guy that it's like a human Google. And so you know that there's something there. You don't know the name, but I think it's pretty tastefully done.
Yeah, I mean, look, some of the things that I might have wanted would probably have made the movie worse. I do concede that, but I was just thinking that specifically with Gurney, when like he does say these occasional poetic lines, but it felt like Josh Brolin was just like kind of gruffing them out rather than really taking them on. I don't know, a different interpretation as well.
There's Hooker mentions that it's very Inceptionist, and all I had what we were all laughing at while we were listening was mentioning it was very Batman Begins.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely a Han sound. And one thing that I would comment on with the mix, that is actually something one of my students brought up today as well, about like, I guess Alan Meyerson did the mix. And it's very much one big wall of sound kind of throughout, where like obviously it's produced really well, but kind of thinking with that in mind, I could appreciate if there was a bit more kind of clarity. Like it's just like everything is sort of huge and washed in reverb, and it's just sort of in your face. Yeah. And so I think there could be maybe a bit more depth to it,
more nuance.
One thing I thought they did really well whether it be in the mixing or the writing. I think it's both. But for me, the really successful thing about the score is, apart from a couple of specific sorts of character pieces like the Bene Gesserit thing, I think that he nails the dryness. I know that's a weird thing to say, but it's a big theme of this film that this is a powerful family that moves from their nice, moist Caladan planet and is forced to take over Arrakis, which is a desert planet, and has no moisture on it at all. And it's this whole thing. And I think the score has a lot of parts to it where he really gets this kind of granular, dry sounds, lots of kind of, I don't know, sandy frequencies. I don't know how to describe it, but I think he does that really, really well. There's a definite kind of dryness to it. I don't know if you guys agree with that at all.
Oh, but I like Jim's comment.
That's interesting, Sam.
Yeah, we've seen other examples of that.
I was kind of thinking that Dune surprised me in that I didn't feel that sense of dryness. Only from the point of view that I just remember how much they made of it in the book, and like, you could see people like trying to soak up the little bit of dew in the morning, and like your body water is your life, and every little bit of water is so precious. But maybe I'm thinking that's in the film. But now I come to think of it, yeah, a lot of the textures were more to that end. So I feel kind of pulled in two directions on that one.
I think it. Sorry. I think it also, they could have done that through silencing the score and doing it through ambient sound design or whatever when in the desert and stuff. But I think the sound design that Hans does in the score makes use of a lot of sounds like that, sandy sounds. And I know for a fact that he explored the sort of ornithopter propeller sound. It's not propeller, but you know what I mean, the wings. Which they nail as well. I thought the ornithopters were bang on, but this is getting nerdy now. But yeah, I like that aspect to it. I think he got that right. Guys, it's 9:10.
Yeah, I'm gonna make some dinner. So
same. Yeah, starving.
I've had mine. But thanks, guys. In short, not faultless, but we really liked it. I think it's fair to say.
I'm really excited to see it now.
Can I see it with you, Mike? I want to see it again.
Yeah,
I want to see it again. Let's go.
I mean, maybe Saturday at the IMAX. Could be great.
Cool.
So yeah, I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, for sure. You're going to
love
it,
guys. Well, thanks for joining. Thanks for joining in the chat.
Out,
some great comments and opinions and all that. Sam, what's next week?
I can't remember. Oh, it's so we had Action last week, June this week, and I think next week is it's synth scores, I think, or like sound design scores. I'll specify at some point, but yeah, we want submissions from people, please. We want people to send in their maybe hybrid scores, stuff that makes use of sound design and elements like that. That'll be really cool. So we'll message about that in the week.
Yeah, so just keep an eye out. Tell your friends, come along, bring your synth scores and bring them on. We'll review them. And yeah, Darren, we'll let you know. Let you know if we go to the IMAX. You can absolutely come along. We can make a big outing. Anyone who wants to come, I'll reach out.
Yeah, IMAX is the way to see this film. Like, it's for sure.
And when we talk about IMAX, we mean the IMAX, the Waterloo one.
The IMAX, yeah.
Is submissions open for everyone? Absolutely, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. So, by the way, Hooker is one of the first-year students on the course now.
Nice.
So,
hi,
welcome. And yeah, absolutely. You can. So the way that we typically do these is just come on the stream. You can send a link. You could send it to us ahead of time. Kind of reach out in various ways. We still have a website for Score Connect, but you could also reach out like on Facebook is probably easier, more checked. Or just show up with a link, like a G Drive link or a Dropbox link or something. that we can then just open up and play. So feel free. You can just sort of show up on the night and submit some stuff, and we'll have a listen and give some feedback.
For sure.
Cool.
Thanks,
Cool,
everyone.
guys. Well done.
Thank you, guys.
Gonna read it again.
Thanks, everyone.
No.
Yeah.
Bye.
We're all Dune.